let's get going. First, the Anaglyph Jukebox.
Warning: the following program contains graphic images from a global tragedy back in the 1980s. We present these historic photographs, despite their shocking content, so that the world never forgets those millions of innocent lives lost. To all those survivors, and especially to the family members that they lost, this jukebox is dedicated. Welcome to today's edition of the Anaglyph Jukebox. You never know what you'll find on the old jukebox. Let's press B31. Okay, we've got When Dinosaurs Attack, 3D. Everyone who was alive then remembers that fateful day in 1988 when the dinosaurs attacked. An experiment conducted on the International Space Station went horribly awry. Intended only to view more than 65 million years in the past, instead, it drew creatures from that age into our own. All living dinosaurs from the Devonian to the late Cretaceous period were suddenly, savagely, swept through time into the 20th century. The world trembled as dinosaurs and other prehistoric monsters invaded familiar surroundings, setting cities ablaze and devouring millions of hysterical human beings. We asked the question, can the human race survive? Or will these towering monarchs from the dawn of creation once again inherit the earth? This time, for all time? Kendall Park, New Jersey. Barney, the beloved mongrel pet of the Brown family, was stamped early this afternoon by an unidentified dinosaur, according to Valerie Brown, the dog's youthful owner. Barney spotted a cat on the corner of Newman and Kingsley and instinctively gave chase round the corner. He was unprepared for the startling appearance of the huge creature. Barney's gut-wrenching yelp was cut short, as was his life. This incident is symbolic of the fantastic war being waged by the dinosaurs. Not only are they threatening man, but man's best friend as well.
Let's begin with Waco, which gives me opportunity to change things on this side. now I'd like to introduce Herb Weiner. He's the president, and Mark Wilkie is on the board of directors of the Cascade Stereoscopic Club. Together, they created the most amazing look at fireworks in 3D. Welcome back, Herb. Thank you very much for taking the time out this next weekend.
Thanks for having me. So when you're shooting fireworks, the size of the mortars that you can sort of see there, that's the size of the shell that get loaded into the mortar. So the shell has to fit perfectly into the mortar to create a pretty much airtight seal. So when the lift charge goes off, it blows the firework up into the air.
Now,
So
what are those pipes? What do those pipes do for a living normally? What are they?
They are just full time when they're not on a fireworks show. They're in storage waiting for the next show.
But what did they? You can't buy that at Home Depot. I mean, what are they? What was their original use, or are they just firework mortars?
It's HDPE, high density polyethylene. So, I mean, I'm sure you can buy them and use them for other things. It's not PVC. PVC would just shatter.
So you buy those in bulk? I guess that's.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that so I work for Western Display, and they basically have a whole warehouse full of these, and I'm sure what they do is they buy these and then put them in, build the racks and put them in the racks, and have them all set up for the shows on the 4th.
Last question on this one picture. We got many more to go. Does anybody test them after these events, like for cracks and all that kind of stuff?
They visually inspect them. I'm not sure how you could test them other than blowing them up.
I knew I set you up for a good one. I felt the setup coming as I said it. Anyway, so we'll go on to the next ones.
So, setting up a fireworks show is quite a bit of work. Those mortar racks, are pretty heavy. So the 4-inch racks, one person could lift it themselves. The 5-inch racks, it's really much easier to have 2 people carry them. And then we're setting them up in that trench. And then putting sand around them. The sand basically keeps the racks stable so that they don't move during the show.
Which you bring up a good point there. So now when they're putting the racks in, right? Is there? I mean, obviously they have to be pointed. So I think we'll find out. I gave away the next. Gotcha.
Okay. And so this is Ilwaco, Washington. For people who've never heard of it, it's about 4 miles south of Long Beach, Washington. We actually do, Long Beach is a bigger city. They actually have a bigger fireworks display in Long Beach. Long Beach is right on the ocean. Ilwaco is sort of on the bay. Mark actually tried to film the show in Long Beach as well, but it's much windier there since it's right near the ocean, and there's blowing sand, which makes it hard to set up the cameras, and high wind that actually knocks over his tripods. He basically just gave up and said, okay, it's easier to film it in Ilwaco.
Now,
but, when you're go back one. So so when you're looking back, you can sort of see the buildings in the background, and those are little shops and restaurants, and that's where people congregate to watch the show. They'll set up chairs, so you can sort of get a feel for how far away the audience is.
now was this like a 4th of July show or what?
Well, this was I believe a July 2nd show. So Ilwaco and Long Beach are only 4 miles away, so they don't compete with each other for their fireworks show. The big fireworks show is in Long Beach on July 4th, and then Ilwaco will do their show on the Saturday before or after the 4th, so it won't be on the 4th.
It'd be kind of cool if they launched them at each other. No, that very. Now, do
Well,
they
the
do?
nice thing is,
but do they do? Do they also do?
so both shows are hand lit.
Interesting.
And we do both shows. So the nice thing is, because they're not on the same night, I get to do two different shows.
That's going to be the answer to the question I started
Yeah,
to build on. Yeah.
so what we're doing is we're checking the angle. What we want to do, since we're right near the water, we want to aim the shells about 10 degrees tilted toward the water. And we do that for actually a couple of reasons. First of all, sometimes there's a wind blowing from the water toward the land, and so this sort of compensates. We don't want the shells to be blowing towards the crowd, and so this keeps them, over the fallout area.
Now, do you have? Yeah, obviously you have I can't think of the name of it now. A wind meter. Something that could tell you the speed of the wind. A wind speed indicator.
Yeah, it's on my iPhone. I look it up and I say, "What's the wind speed?" And it'll give me Long Beach, not Ilwaco, because that's a bigger town. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And at what wind speed? Well, see, I guess it would be the direction. If it was in terms of this photo image, if it was coming from the left of the screen to the right, it wouldn't be such a big deal. But if it was coming from the right to the left, that would be right. That would,
Yeah,
because
that would be a bigger problem. But generally, what happens is the wind tends to die down in the evening as the sun sets, or after the sun sets, because it's basically the differences in temperature over the water and over the land that cause the wind. I'm not a weatherman, but
okay. But the last question on this image. So there seems to be different diameter mortars there, right?
right. So there are, the bigger ones are 5-inch diameter, the smaller ones are 4-inch diameter. But
the first row looks even smaller than the second row, or is that an optical illusion?
Okay, you're actually right. So the first row is 3-inch. So we only use 3-inch in the opener or the finale. So what will happen is these will all be chained together, and when we light them, they're all going to go off. And so we don't light them individually. But so yeah, the front row is 3-inch, but I think that's all the 3 inches in the entire show.
Last question, we'll have to move on, but are those they look like they're just leaned against each other. Are they screwed, nailed, bolted, or just left that way?
So because we're putting sand in the trench, the sand is going to push them together. So the 3-inch mortars are in racks of 10. Because they're lighter, you could carry them. If the 4s or 5s were in racks of 10, you wouldn't be able to lift them. And so you can sort of see the shells. The size of the shell is just the same as the diameter of the mortar. So you can see in the front row, the 3-inch shells, they're already chained all together. So you can sort of see them when you light them, you're lighting all of them. What we're loading in the back is the 5-inch. We put the bigger shells away from us. Not that, having an extra 6 inches of distance is going to make all that much difference when they're blowing up, but why put the biggest ones right next to you?
So before we get to the next picture, all of those lines coming out, right? All of those cables or wires or fuses.
They're fuses.
They're fuses. We're talking fireworks here. Yep. So those are lit with one light, and
yeah. So we actually use road flares to light them. And
so they'd be are they like they're wound into some of a so
they're spliced together. So that fuse, it's called quick match. It burns at about 30 feet per second. So that fuse burns pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
And here what I'm doing is I'm splicing the fuses together. So when the fireworks company supplies them, they'll give me a chain set where all the 3 inches are connected together and all the 4 inches are connected together and all the 5 inches are connected. But then I have to splice the 3 inches to the 4 inches to the 5 inches so that they're all going to go off together.
Now this is the meat and potatoes here. So
So, Mark has been buying cameras and tripods for years, ever since he started doing the first show in 2015. And so the video showed, a lot of close-ups. Well, how does he get the close-ups? He gets them by a lot of cameras. Now, the actual aerial fireworks, the cameras are further away because he wants to aim them where the fireworks are going to be bursting in the sky. So he knows that the 5-inch shells will go up about 500 feet. The 4-inch shells will go up about 400 feet. So if he's about 450 feet away from the racks of mortars and aims the camera up at about a 45-degree angle, that's going to be a pretty good aim to catch him, because he can't aim the camera while they're shooting. First of all, he has too many cameras to run around. He starts them all shooting before the show starts and hopes that they're correctly aimed.
and as you stated last week, they're all manual cameras, so that you don't have to worry about the autofocus, exposure, or anything of that stuff going on. So they're all,
That's
and
right.
he finds manual. Now, how does obviously not so obviously, how does he determine the distances between the cameras?
Oh, by experience, because when we first did it, he probably put them a little bit closer together. Now he puts them about 20 to 25 feet apart. Although the cameras you see here, if you look closely, there's two cameras, just mounted side by side, because these are only shooting something that's perhaps 15 feet away. But when you're shooting the aerial shots, he has the cameras mounted about 20 to 25 feet apart.
And this may, and again, you went over this last week, so I just want to make sure anyone, if they weren't here last week, that's clear. They're not 3D cameras. These are all monoscopic cameras.
Yeah.
And in post, when he's editing, he can bring those together and create the.
That's exactly right. So one of the interesting things about fireworks is you don't see them in 3D with your naked eye. And if you had a normal stereoscopic camera, you wouldn't catch anything in 3D because the fireworks are too far away. I'm not going to do trigonometry here, but if it's 500 feet in the air and you're looking up at a 45-degree angle, that's more than 500 feet away. So unless you can find a surgeon to surgically separate your eyes, you're not going to see them in 3D.
The interesting point you bring up about the distances, and I guess like you said, experimentation was the way, right? Because I could see there are all different angles, and it must be something to edit and try to make that into something. That must be obviously some of those cameras, some of those shots are not going to work at all, right?
Yeah. So actually what I'll do is, and I'll put a bunch of information in the chat. One of the things now, our camera club, the Cascade Stereoscopic Club, publishes a monthly newsletter for members. And so Mark had actually written an article for that newsletter, and I'm just putting a bunch of stuff in the chat, and the link will be one of the things that I'm putting into the chat. But it was an article about how he set up the cameras and how he, a lot of information about how he made things work. So,
and that one more little question about, you said about 500 feet. Is that where these charges are going off at about 500 feet? Is that the calculation from?
That's just, I mean, it's not an exact number, but essentially, because these shells come from different companies, and every manufacturer makes their shells a little bit different. But a 5-inch shell will generally burst at about 500 feet. It might be 450, it might be 550. It's not an exact number, but since and what'll happen is, we might not, well, Mark's cameras might not capture every aerial burst. Some might be higher, some might be lower, some might be more to one side or another. But if he has these cameras going for the whole show, he will catch enough to make a good video.
And this is a nice frame grab from what we just saw.
Yeah.
Explain
So
about the camera. Now the camera. Now this is a 3D camera, right? Because
this is a 3D camera. It was probably a GoPro camera, one of the original GoPros where you got two cameras and they could be put in a plastic case and actually wired together and synchronized. And so since it's in that plastic case, which is waterproof and dustproof, relatively, he basically just takes the camera and sets it down on the ground, and he says, hey, the camera's here, try not to step on it. But
and that's a road flare right there. And I could see one of the fuses hanging next to it. So how are you timing that? What are you doing? Oh, I guess there's no music to this, right? It's not one of those where there's accompanying for the audience, through the radio or something like that. This is just you letting it rip.
that's correct. So, I mean, the timing isn't critical, but what we want to do is, we know that if we're shooting shells about every 3 seconds or so, then with the number of shells we have, the show is going to last about 20 minutes, which is what we want. If we shoot them too fast, the show will be a little bit shorter. If we shoot them a little slower, the show will last a little longer.
Now, are you on a headset?
No.
Oh, so if there's something wrong, how does that get? Well, somebody comes over, taps you on the shoulder, say, "Don't like that one," or something,
Yeah.
right?
So what we have, because generally so when these shells leave the mortars, as you might imagine, they are traveling pretty fast, and there's basically, they create quite a blast of moving air. So what often happens
Uh,
is a fuse, because we put them set them up so that the fuses are all leaning towards where the pyrotechnician can light them. But sometimes the blast of air will just pull a fuse, and now it'll be on the other side of the mortar and we can't reach it. So we'll just skip it. And then there will be somebody who goes by after, the row of mortars has been shot. They have a dowel with a hook on the end. So that because you'd never want to reach your arm over these mortars, but they'll reach the dowel over the mortars, use the hook to catch the fuse, pull it back to the other side, and then light it. So, there's no precise timing there. You might have the person, pulling those fuses over, light a mortar at the same time as I'm lighting one. So, big deal, two of them go off at the same time.
but your last thing in terms of safety, I just want to get a little of that clear. How does if something happened, because you don't know, that thing just launched and you're focused on what you're doing. Obviously, you're not watching the show. You're focused on launching the projectiles. If there's something wrong, how do they get to you? How
Okay.
does someone tell you to stop?
Okay, so you saw the size of the crew that we had, in the still
Sure.
photo at the end of the video. So while there are people firing, there are always people watching what's going on. And so, they would basically run over and tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, there's a problem. Or if I'm not lighting them, somebody else is lighting them, I would run over and tap them on the shoulder. But
Got it.
um, so anyway, I like this shot. It shows that I have some GoPro cameras on my helmet. So often Mark will use some of the video from my GoPro cameras as part of the video that he produces. This is from 2022, and it turns out that my batteries had reached the end of their life, and so the camera stopped filming shortly before the finale went off. So there was no good footage in 2022, but often there is. And obviously, if I were looking directly at the fireworks, that would be some pretty good footage. But clearly, Mark has put cameras everywhere. So, I mean, this is really a good shot. It shows, what we're feeling the thunder from these things going off.
And now that's so you say it's a 20-minute show, but how are you timing it? Do you have because sometimes when you're wrapped up in things, it's going to go quicker. Time goes by fast. It's hard to be on everybody's time schedule. So do you have you obviously don't have a watch there, or you just do it by instinct? And while we're on that question, who calls the first shot? In other words, you're ready to go when somebody give you
there are a few questions there, so I'll answer them in reverse order. So as the lead pyrotechnician, I tell people when to shoot the first shot, which we try and do at 10 p.m. The sponsor says, let's start the show at 10 p.m. So somebody will have a cell phone out. They'll be watching the clock. It's 10 p.m. They'll give me a signal. We'll tell the first person to light the finale, and that'll be 10 p.m. And then everything else is just my instinct on, pacing it.
Great. And now these shots, I guess these were screen grabs, or it looks like it could be a camera, right?
Yeah. So Mark has some still cameras set up as well as his video cameras. So I'm not absolutely positive, but I believe this was probably just a still shot. The shots prior to this were frame grabs off the video. So everything that was ground shots were frame grabs off the video. And then I'm not absolutely positive, but I believe these were still shots that Mark grabbed.
Well, that's gorgeous. We're going to flip through. That's just gorgeous.
And I have nothing to add. The fireworks say everything that there is to be said.
Great bunch of people. And thank you to, let's see, Herb. And of course, Skylar, Carl, Don, Tony, Destiny.
Yeah.
Donna, Kim, Kevin, Emily, Travis, Julian, and of course, last but not least.
Yeah, my wife,
Mark.
Julian.
Oh, your wife too. I meant your wife. That's right. But last but not least, your wife. And Mark too. He just held the camera guy. But that's wonderful.
Interesting story. Basically,
yet another one. Yes, go ahead.
I like interesting stories. Who wants to tell boring stories? So when my wife and I were dating, and our first 4th of July together, she asked me, what do you want to do on the 4th of July? I said, well, I'm going to be lighting a fireworks show. And she said, you mean we're not going to be together? And I said, well, do you want to light a fireworks show? And she said, okay. And so that's how she got into it.
So great. Without any more ado, which I'm doing all over the place, we're going to let this run. Let me reiterate, as an iterator, thank you so much for bringing that to us, Herb. That was phenomenal. And your silent partner, your wife, and also Mark Wilkie. Phenomenal, and all those wonderful people. And, and of course, today, thank you, and thanks to our wonderful crew to making this all possible. And thank you for stopping by to see what you've been missing in 3D.